Mark Rogers TV running through quarterback situations across the country, and this has become the situation in college football at the quarterback position. And regardless of how it shakes out, we have the third string quarterback who is the most popular and successful quarterback in the history of college football. So it's an interesting topic, and we're only going to have to wait for time to tell how this thing shakes out. But we can speculate, and we go to one of the best to do just that. Guy who's written some great copy for Bleacher Report in the past, Brian Leigh, joins us to talk Ohio State quarterback. Brian, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's this topic's been really underreported, so I'm happy someone's finally getting to it.
Yeah, it's amazing how nobody's talked about this. So we're going to bring to light some of this stuff. No, really, hopefully we've got a different spin on it. So let's go with Braxton Miller. Let's start with him. He was the incumbent, so it's amazing that he's possibly the forgotten man at this point. So your thoughts about where he stands and some of the latest reports, just and conjecture about his health and where he may fit into this, if he's going to transfer. What's up with Braxton Miller?
Yeah, I mean, right now it sounds like he's not. I mean, he's in the competition, but he sounds like the least serious contender for his shoulder. It's the biggest unknown. It's all the reports. I'm not a doctor, which I was screaming during Steph Curry's injury a couple nights ago also, but all the reports seem to indicate that he can't throw the way he used to, and he's not transferring from everything he said, from everything the school has said, which means he's either going to be the most accomplished third stringer of all time, like you said, or he's going to have to look for a role in a slash kind of capacity where he can use his legs. But even that is going to be hard to find because of Ohio State's roster. They've got Jalen Marshall, they've got Dontre Wilson, they've got Curtis Samuel playing this position that he could sort of play without having to throw. And at both of the positions that he could, help any team besides Ohio State at, he's sort of roadblocked.
Yeah, they have done some recruiting there in Columbus over the past few years when it comes to skill position players. Again, just to keep the record straight here, Braxton Miller, one of the more accomplished quarterbacks in the history of the Big Ten, 2 offensive MVP awards, took them to the championship game in the Big Ten, won 24 consecutive games, and on and on and on. JT Barrett steps in for Braxton Miller, has the rough go against Virginia Tech, and when really the game planning came to light, we understood that it wasn't as much of his fault as we had thought at that point because of what the Virginia Tech did on defense and what Ohio State was completely incapable of game planning for and adjusting to. So JT Barrett, though, puts that aside and goes on this incredible run, actually breaks Drew Brees' Big Ten record for total touchdowns in a season with 45. Your thoughts about JT Barrett, and of course he's coming off an injury as well.
Yeah, his injury doesn't sound as severe in the present as Braxton Miller's. He should be a full go by fall camp, and if he is, I think he's sort of the underdog, the slight underdog. I think the quote Vegas underdog, but like you said, he's the one that I would back just because. Virginia Tech game notwithstanding, I was so impressed by what he did last year. I put on the Michigan State game earlier this offseason, and I think that might have been the best game I saw any quarterback play last year because his receivers weren't open for most of the game. They were covered, and he was making perfect throws, and they hung 45 on Sparty and East Lansing, and no one does that. And that was par for the course for him. He was incredible, and if he's healthy again next year, there's a reason he beat Cardale Jones out of spring camp last year, out of fall camp last year, passed him on the depth chart, and was almost the Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year. And he's healthier than Braxton, and I think he's more accurate than Cardale.
Yeah, he's physically the least daunting of the three. Braxton Miller is the sheer athlete. Cardale Jones, will get to him in just a second. JT Barrett, again, not to slight his size, speed, anything. He's a very good athlete. He's got decent size, but he's physically the least intimidating guy out there. But when it comes to a guy who, after a little bit of a rough go, grasped the offense and still, most analysts would say, still has the best grasp of the offense and how to distribute the football, make the right reads, deliver the football, deliver it on time, anticipate throws, do all those things that you really can't measure without watching the game tape. he would be the guy that seems to play with the most polish, even more so than Braxton Miller, who has a whole lot more experience, a couple seasons on JT Barrett. All right, Cardale Jones, the Cinderella story, amazing as the third stringer. We know the deal. Comes in against Wisconsin, and even after he bludgeons the Badgers, most of us said, okay, let's do it against Bama. Hostile environment. You're not going to have a double-digit lead the entire game. You're going to have to play behind the sticks, face a pass rush, face this incredible talent. What are you going to do? Pulls through against a Nick Saban defense, and then, of course, marches Ohio State on to a romp of a national championship win against Oregon. So, Cardale Jones, your little scouting report after what we saw.
Yeah, it's on paper, there's nothing he can't do, and on the field, there's nothing he's done wrong. So, there's a reason he's now the presumed number one. He's 6'5", he's got a cannon arm, he's an automatic first down on 3rd and 4th or short. He's faster than people think he is, and his accuracy, while not JT Barrett level, was good enough to win a national championship. So it's hard to say anything bad about him. The only thing that gives me slight trepidation is, and you obviously can't take anything away from beating Wisconsin, Alabama, and Oregon, but he's never played a road game. And like I said, JT Barrett won in East Lansing last year, where Cardale's only played on neutral fields, and they're going to open the season at Virginia Tech in a stadium that, you know, when it's not the middle of the season and the fans aren't jaded because their team's 5-4 or whatever Virginia Tech has been the past few years, it's one of the 10 or 15 hardest places to play. And it's going to be a night game. It's going to be a really good defense with really good cornerbacks, Kendall Fuller, Brandon – I can't pronounce his last name, but it's got an F in it. They're both really good. You know, Cardale's obviously been in bigger spots than that, but he's been in different spots. He's never been in a stadium like, or in a city like Blacksburg. He's never faced a defense like that on the road. And you have to grasp at straws to say anything bad about Cardale's case because he's been so impressive. But that definitely does concern me.
And JT Barrett also against lesser foes, but still capable foes, won at Penn State in front of 100,000 plus, and at Minnesota against a pretty good Gophers team that was fringe top 25. So I've heard from a number of people, Brian, that they say, how can you pull Cardale Jones? He won the job. He went on this incredible run, almost unlike anything we've seen in college football history. So he's made himself the starter. How can you possibly pull the national championship quarterback? It sounds like you're saying that's one way to look at it, but you need to choose the best player. And to you, that best player seems to be JT Barrett.
Right. I mean, I think that's a really fair case, that rhetorical question, but I think you could say the same thing about how could you pull the guy who broke Drew Brees' record. And I just think I don't envy Urban Meyer, because no matter what happens in that first game, no matter which quarterback he picks, if they come up empty on their first 2 drives, it's going to be people screaming to put the other guy in. And God forbid Ohio State doesn't make the playoff. You know, the goodwill he's accrued it's not going to go away, but it's going to be really easy to blame him, because if any quarterback loses a game, it's going to be really easy to say he should have started the other guy.
It's the best of situations. It's also the worst of situations, like you say, for Urban Meyer, unless they steamroll from game one, regardless of the choice. And there's going to be some bumps in the road, even for a team as talented as this. It's just interesting to see how it will play out. Or they could go the route in August just to say open competition. But based on the results on the field and the play that we've seen in the performance, you would think that the competition is going to be not necessarily a slam dunk for either one of those two, or even Braxton Miller if he's somehow able to get himself physically ready for that battle. That it's just such a razor close finish for these three, and they all have similar skill sets, but very different skill sets in certain ways. Brian Leigh's written some exceptional stuff for Bleacher Report. Check it out. Brian joins us from time to time to break down college football. Hey, Brian, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.